They said funerals bring families together. They lied. Rain hammered the church roof as I stood beside my father's coffin, holding my breath and my composure. My name is Clara Whitmore, and at that moment I realized I was the outsider at my own family's farewell. The lawyer's voice echoed through the chapel. According to Mr. Whitmore's will, each sentence fell like a blade. My brother Thomas received the company. My sister Lydia inherited the lake house. And me, the lawyer hesitated, to his daughter Clara Whitmore. He leaves one personal item of emotional significance. The room went silent before Lydia's laughter cut through the air. Maybe it's one of his old cufflinks, she sneered. Instead, the lawyer placed a small, rusted key into my hand, cold, rough, heavy with meaning I couldn't see yet. I forced a smile. Is this a joke? Thomas smirked. Guess Dad thought you weren't ready for anything valuable. The thunder outside growled as if it disagreed. I slipped the key into my pocket. On its surface, barely visible under the rust, were the carved numbers 11C. When the service ended, they all clinked glasses of champagne in the parlor, celebrating their millions. I walked to the graveyard instead. The rain turned the dirt soft beneath my shoes. That's when I noticed something strange on the edge of my father's headstone, scratched by hand. The answer isn't here. My heart stopped. I pulled out the key, feeling its teeth press against my palm like a pulse. Somewhere my father had hidden something and he wanted me to find it. I didn't sleep that night. The sound of rain against my window kept time with the storm inside my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that key, small, rusted, yet somehow alive in my palm. 11C. What could that mean? By morning, the world smelled of wet soil and regret. My siblings were already gone off to celebrate their inheritance. Lydia had posted a picture on social media, her champagne glass raised, captioned, "New Beginnings." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I made coffee, black and bitter, and spread my father's old documents across the kitchen table. Bank statements, letters, receipts, fragments of a life built on secrets and success. Somewhere, the clue had to be there. Then I saw it, an old business envelope stamped Whitmore Steel Storage, Unit 11C. My hands went cold. That was one of my father's earliest properties, a warehouse district he bought in the 70s. I remembered visiting once as a little girl. The place smelled like iron and dust, and he'd told me, some doors, Clara, should only be opened when the world forgets they exist. I grabbed my coat. The drive took an hour. The farther I went, the more the city changed. Glass towers gave way to broken windows, neon signs to rusted gates. By the time I reached the storage yard, fog hung low like a secret. The guard looked up from his newspaper. "You lost, ma'am." I showed him the key. "I'm looking for Unit 11C. It belonged to my father, George Whitmore." He frowned. "That old man, haven't seen anyone touch that unit in decades. Power's been cut off for years." Perfect. Inside, the air was cold and still the smell of oil and old paper thick around me. Dust danced in the faint light slipping through cracked glass panes. Rows of locked doors stretched ahead like forgotten memories. I found it 11C, faded numbers barely clinging to a metal plate. My hand shook as I pushed the key into the lock. It resisted at first, then turned with a sharp click. The door groaned open. Inside was darkness, but not emptiness. A desk sat in the corner covered in sheets of plastic, a lamp long dead, piles of wooden crates, some stamped with old company logos, Whitmore Manufacturing. I lifted one lid and coughed as dust exploded into the air. Inside were binders, ledgers, contracts, all labeled neatly in my father's handwriting. But one crate stood apart, smaller, sealed with heavy tape and marked with red paint, Private GW. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to open it, and every fear begged me not to. I cut the tape anyway. Inside was a leather journal. My father's handwriting sprawled across the first page. "If you're reading this, it means the wrong people are celebrating, and you, my daughter, are the only one left who still listens." My throat tightened. I flipped through pages filled with names, numbers, and sketches of factory layouts. Then one line froze me. Thomas and Lydia altered the company's books in 2015. They used offshore accounts. The truth is buried under the steel contracts. A chill ran down my spine. I turned to the last page and found a folded photo, my father standing beside a man I didn't recognize, shaking hands in front of a massive vault door. On the back of the photo, in fading ink, he'd written, "The vault is not what it seems." Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the warehouse. I froze. Footsteps. Someone else was here. I killed the flashlight and crouched behind the desk. The footsteps grew closer, steady, heavy. Through the cracks of the crates, I saw a silhouette, a man in a long coat holding a flashlight. "Hello?" I whispered, almost against my will. The light snapped toward me. He stepped closer, and for a split second, the beam caught his face. My breath caught in my throat. It was the lawyer from the funeral. He stared at me, eyes unreadable, then said calmly, "You weren't supposed to find this yet." Before I could speak, he turned off his flashlight and disappeared into the shadows. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I looked back at the journal, the vault photo trembling in my hands. Somewhere in this web of steel and dust, my father had left something far bigger than money, and someone didn't want me to uncover it. The rain outside started again, louder, angrier. I locked the door behind me, clutching the journal close to my chest. Whatever was inside that vault, my father had died protecting it. And now someone wanted to make sure I never found out. I didn't drive home that night. My hands were shaking too much to hold the wheel steady. Instead, I parked behind an abandoned diner across from the warehouse and stared through the rain-streaked windshield, the leather journal still on the passenger seat beside me. The lawyer's words echoed in my head. "You weren't supposed to find this yet." What did that mean, yet? Was there a plan, a timeline for when I was supposed to know the truth? I flipped the journal open again, scanning my father's handwriting by the dim glow of the dashboard light. One page caught my eye, a rough sketch of the warehouse layout. At the bottom, beneath a drawn rectangle labeled 11C, was another box. It had no label, just a symbol, a triangle inside a circle. I froze. I remembered that mark. My father used to etch it on things he didn't want anyone to touch: drawers, ledgers, files. It meant, for Clara only. I looked up at the warehouse, its windows like dark eyes watching me. There was something under Unit 11C. I waited until midnight, then slipped back inside through the side door. The air was thick and silent except for the distant drip of rainwater through the roof. My flashlight beam swept across the concrete floor, the crates, the old desk. In the far corner, half hidden under a tarp, I saw something I'd missed earlier, a metal hatch padlocked and bolted down. And there it was again, the same triangle and circle symbol scratched into the metal. My hands trembled as I fit the rusted key into the lock. It turned easily, this time, almost as if the metal remembered me. The hatch creaked open. Cold air rushed up, smelling like earth and time. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, swallowed by darkness. Every instinct screamed, "Don't go," but another voice, my father's voice, whispered, "Find what?" I couldn't say. I descended step by cautious step. The air grew colder. My flashlight flickered against concrete walls lined with pipes and faded paint. At the bottom, a steel door waited, smaller than a bank vault, but heavier. A single keyhole gleamed at its center. The key slid in perfectly. Click! The door hissed open. Inside was a small underground room, maybe 15 feet wide, lit only by a flickering emergency bulb that must have been running on a backup battery. In the center stood a glass case covered in dust. Inside the case, stacks of folders, a few metal boxes, and unbelievably a bundle of cash, wrapped in wax paper. But it wasn't the money that caught my eye. It was the envelope resting on top, sealed with red wax bearing my name, Clara. My pulse hammered. I broke the seal. Inside was a single page written in my father's firm, unmistakable hand. "If you're reading this, I've failed to stop them. The company you think you know is built on lies. Thomas and Lydia used offshore funds to hide what they stole, but the documents below will prove it. Trust no one, especially the man who reads this letter aloud at my funeral." The lawyer. My knees nearly gave out. I reached for the folders inside the case and flipped one open. Inside were signed contracts, forged statements, and offshore bank ledgers, millions moved under false company names. My father had collected everything. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Above me this time, faint, slow, deliberate. I killed the light and crouched low. Dust fell from the ceiling as someone walked across the floor of the warehouse above. Then, the sound of metal scraping. The hatch. Someone was opening it. My chest tightened. I scanned the room. There was another door, smaller, half buried behind filing cabinets. I yanked it open and slipped through just as the main hatch clanged open above me. The passage led into an older tunnel, probably part of the old factory foundation. I stumbled through, clutching the envelope and journal. Behind me, the echo of boots followed. Clara, a man's voice, shouted. It wasn't the lawyer's. It was deeper, colder. Thomas. I froze. He was here. How come out, he called. You shouldn't have come back. You're playing with things you don't understand. My flashlight flickered. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. His steps drew closer, echoing through the tunnel. I could smell his cologne, sharp, expensive, arrogant, even through the dust. Then my foot hit something metallic, a toolbox. I crouched, flipped it open. Inside, an old crowbar. When his shadow stretched across the wall, I didn't think. I swung. The sound was sickening. He fell, groaning, the flashlight rolling away. I grabbed the journal, the documents, and ran up the tunnel, up the stairs, through the hatch, out into the storm. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. My hands were covered in dirt and blood, my heart a hammer in my chest. In the rearview mirror, lightning flashed, and for a split second I saw him standing in the doorway of the warehouse, one hand pressed to his head, his face twisted in rage. He shouted something, but the thunder swallowed it. I started the car and drove into the night. Somewhere between the lightning and the rain, one truth hit me like a blade. My father hadn't just left me evidence. He had left me enemies, and they were no longer hiding. By dawn, I was 20 miles away, parked behind a gas station diner that smelled of bacon grease and bad coffee. My hands still trembled on the steering wheel, dried blood crusted on my sleeve. I couldn't tell if it was Thomas's or mine. I kept replaying last night in my head the vault, the letter, the look on my brother's face when the crowbar came down. My stomach twisted. I hadn't meant to hurt him. I'd only meant to survive. The waitress tapped on my window. "Ma'am, you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." She nodded slowly as if she didn't believe me and walked away. Inside the diner, everything smelled safe. Eggs sizzling, coffee pouring, the hum of old country music. For a few seconds, I could almost pretend I was just another traveler on a gray morning, but the leather journal on the seat beside me made that impossible. I slid into a booth by the window, opened the pages, and spread the documents out beneath the flickering neon light. Offshore accounts, forged invoices, signatures, my brother's, Lydia's, even the lawyer's. My father had known everything, but then I noticed something new. Between two pages hidden under the binding was another folded note. Different paper, different ink fresher. I opened it. "Clara, if they've found you, don't go home. There's a safety deposit box in my name at Bellevue Bank. Use the key marked B. Trust only the man who helped me hide it. His name is Harold Dean. Harold Dean." I'd never heard the name before. My father had worked with hundreds of people, but that one didn't ring a bell. I pulled out my phone to search for him, but before I could type the name, the screen lit up an incoming call from Lydia. I froze. The last person I wanted to hear from. The phone buzzed again, relentless. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Clara." Her voice trembled, not angry, not mocking, but scared. "What do you want?" "It's Thomas. He's in the hospital. He told the police you attacked him." My breath caught. "He came after me first." "I know," she whispered. "But they're not interested in the truth, Clara. The lawyer's with him right now. They said you stole company property files, cash. They're coming for you." My hand went numb. "You're lying." "Am I?" She said, her tone suddenly colder. "You always thought you were the victim, but Dad trusted you with something he shouldn't have. You should have stayed gone." The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the window, pale, sleepless hair clinging to my damp forehead. The police would be looking for me soon, maybe already were. Then, from the counter, the waitress called out, "Coffee's on the house, sweetheart. You look like you need it." She set the mug down gently, her eyes flicking toward the parking lot. "But if you're hiding from someone, they just pulled in." My chest clenched. Through the rain-specked glass, I saw at a black sedan idling near my car 2 men inside wearing suits. One of them stepped out, scanning the diner windows. I gathered the papers, shoved them back into the journal, and slipped out through the kitchen door. The cook shouted, "Hey!" "You can't," but I was already gone, running through the alley behind the gas station. I ducked behind a dumpster and waited, breath shallow. The sedan doors slammed. Footsteps, voices. "She's close," one said. Dean said she wouldn't get far. Dean. The same name from my father's note. My pulse spiked. Was Harold Dean helping me or hunting me? The rain started again, harder this time, drumming against the metal bins like a warning. I clutched the journal to my chest and whispered to the empty air, "Dad, what did you get me into?" By the time the storm faded, I'd driven nearly 3 hours west, taking back roads and side streets until the city vanished in my rearview mirror. My gas tank blinked red. My eyes ached from exhaustion, and the only thing keeping me awake was the thought of that name, Harold Dean. According to the GPS, Bellevue Bank was an hour ahead, tucked inside a quiet town called Ashridge. My father's note had been clear: use the key marked B. Trust only Harold Dean. But trust was something I no longer believed in. When I finally pulled into Ashridge, dawn was just breaking, a gray, tired light over empty streets. The kind of town where everyone knows everyone and strangers are noticed immediately. I parked behind the post office and took a moment to breathe. The key hung heavy on my necklace, now the one I'd found taped inside my father's journal cover, marked with a single "Ba, the bank opened at 8:00 a.m. I waited in the car until the lights came on inside. At exactly 8:05, I walked through the doors, pretending I wasn't shaking. The teller, a young woman with red hair, smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you? I need to access a safety deposit box under the name George Whitmore," I said softly. Her smile faded slightly. "One moment, please." She disappeared into a back room. My heart pounded with each second that passed. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A man in his late 60s followed, tall, silver hair, pressed jacket. His eyes were calm but sharp, the kind that had seen too much. "Ms. Whitmore," he asked. "I'm Harold Dean." The air left my lungs. You worked with my father?" He nodded slowly. "For many years. He said if you ever came here, it meant trouble had already started." He gestured for me to follow him down a narrow hallway to a private vault room. My every step echoed like a warning. Inside, he unlocked a metal drawer and pulled out a long box sealed with wax. He slid it toward me. "Your father gave this to me 6 years ago. Told me never to open it, only to hand it to you personally." I stared at the box. "Do you know what's inside?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Enough to destroy everything your siblings built." I broke the seal. Inside were flash drives, several handwritten notes, and a small cassette tape labeled June 12th, Confession. "What is this?" I whispered. "Evidence," he said. "Your father recorded something he was never supposed to know about a deal Thomas made with an overseas investor. If it's true, it could mean fraud, embezzlement, even criminal charges." I felt dizzy. Then why didn't my father expose them? Dean's expression darkened. He tried, but someone got to him first. I froze. "You mean his death?" "Wasn't natural," Dean interrupted softly. "He didn't have a heart attack, Clara. The autopsy report was altered. He was poisoned." The room spun. My knees went weak and I gripped the table for balance. "You're saying my own family, I'm saying," he whispered, leaning closer. "They didn't want the truth to survive. And now they know you have it." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the lobby. Dean turned sharply. A voice shouted, "FBI! Everyone stay where you are!" Dean's eyes went wide. "They found us." He shoved the flash drives into my hand. "There's a back exit through the records room. Go! Now!" "What about you?" He smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. "I've been waiting for this moment since your father died." Gunshots cracked in the hall. Dean pushed me toward the door, yelling, "Run!" "Clara," I ran. The sirens, the shouting, the gunfire, all blurred behind me as I burst through the emergency exit and into the alley. I ducked behind a dumpster just as men in dark jackets stormed the building. When I looked back through the rain, I saw Dean on the floor, hands raised, blood blooming on his shoulder, shouting something I couldn't hear, before they dragged him away. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to scream, but his last words echoed in my head, "Go. Now." So I did. I clutched the drives, the tape, and the key and disappeared into the morning fog. The motel I found was the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. A flickering neon sign buzzed above the office door, "Vacancy." The clerk didn't even ask for ID, just slid me a room key and muttered, "Cash only." Inside the room smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. The curtains were too short to cover the window and the carpet was sticky under my boots. I didn't care. I just needed 4 walls, a lock, and silence. I threw my bag on the bed, locked the door, and sat down on the creaking mattress. Everything inside me trembled. Exhaustion, adrenaline, fear. My father's flash drives were still warm from my grip, their metal edges digging into my palms. Harold Dean's bloodied face flashed in my mind. He'd been shot because of this, because of me. I laid everything out on the bed. The flash drives, behind, the leather journal, the letter, and the cassette tape marked June 12th, confession. It looked so harmless, a small plastic rectangle, something out of another decade, but it felt heavier than the gunfire that had just torn through the bank. The problem was, I didn't have a cassette player. At dawn, I slipped out wearing a borrowed hoodie and sunglasses. The morning fog covered most of my face as I walked down the street toward a thrift shop with a sign that read, "Yesterday's Things." A woman in her 70s was sorting through boxes of vinyl records when I entered, looking for something specific. "Sweetheart, a cassette player, any kind." She smiled, brushing dust off her hands. "Haven't had someone ask for that in years. You a collector?" Something like that. She rummaged around, then pulled out a small silver recorder with a cracked speaker. "Still works. $10. I paid, thanked her, and hurried back to the motel. Back inside, I closed the curtains and sat cross-legged on the bed. My hands shook as I slid the tape into the slot and pressed play. A hiss of static. Then, a voice. My father's voice. "This is George Whitmore. It's June 12th. If you're hearing this, something's gone wrong." My throat tightened. I hadn't heard his voice in months, not since the hospital, not since they told me his heart had given out in his sleep. "I don't have much time. The company's not what it seems. Thomas signed a contract with a firm in Zurich called Langen and Hart. They promised expansion, but what they really wanted was access to our patents, our assets, our accounts. Lydia helped him. And I have proof." There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling papers. "If something happens to me, find the drives. Give them to Harold Dean. He's the only one who knows the whole picture. Clara, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I wanted to protect you by keeping you away. But they knew about you. They said you'd never make it to the reading." My heart stopped. If I don't make it to the end of the week, it means they found out I recorded this. Static again, louder now, as if someone was moving in the room while he spoke. Then my father's voice dropped to a whisper. "If anyone tells you I died peacefully, don't believe them." The tape cut off with a loud click. I sat frozen, staring at the recorder. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I replayed it, hoping I'd imagined it, but every word was there, clear and cold. Someone had murdered my father, and now they were hunting me for the same reason. I needed to know what was on the drives. I plugged the first one into my laptop. The screen flickered, then loaded a folder titled Whitmore Steel Holdings. Inside were hundreds of PDF spreadsheets, scans of contracts, offshore accounts, all pointing to one name, Langen and Hart AG. I clicked another folder. This one was labeled Video Evidence. There were only 2 files. I opened the first. The footage showed my father sitting at his office desk, a single lamp lighting his face. His eyes looked tired, wary. He was talking directly to the camera. This video is for legal proof. Thomas and Lydia signed a partnership with Langen and Hart to transfer intellectual property rights. They've been falsifying financial statements for over a decade. If anything happens to me, I authorize Harold Dean to release this footage to the press. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. But there's more. There's something hidden beneath the old manufacturing site, a Vault 1 that shouldn't exist. It contains what Langan and Hart were truly after. If they find it first, the damage won't just destroy the company, it'll destroy lives. The video ended. I sat back, shaking. The vault. I had already found it, but had I missed something inside it? A knock jolted me out of thought. 3 slow taps on the motel door. My breath hitched. I turned off the laptop, grabbed the recorder, and crept toward the window. Through the curtain gap, I saw a car I didn't recognize. Black. Tinted windows. The knocking came again, firmer this time. "Clara Whitmore," a man's voice called. "This is Agent Myers, FBI. We need to speak with you." FBI. The same people who'd stormed the bank. My pulse spiked. I didn't answer. "Miss Whitmore?" The voice continued, calm but sharp. "You're in danger. Step outside and we'll explain." A lie. I could feel it. I grabbed my bag, shoved the drives, the tape, and the journal inside, and slipped into the bathroom. The window was small, but it opened. I crawled out just as the door lock snapped and the agents burst in. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and ran. Bullets shattered the window behind me. Someone shouted, "She's heading toward the back lot." I sprinted through the alley, lungs burning. My car was gone. They'd already found it. So I kept running. Past the diner, past the gas station, through the fog-soaked woods, until I collapsed against a tree, shaking. Somewhere behind me, sirens wailed. I pulled the tape recorder from my pocket, pressed it to my chest, and whispered, "I heard you, Dad. I won't let them erase you." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the road ahead, and there, barely visible through the rain, stood a dark sedan parked beside the tree line. Its headlights were off, but I could see a figure inside. He was waiting. And this time, I knew he wasn't from the FBI. The figure in the sedan didn't move. No headlights, no engine noise, just silence and mist curling around the tires. I crouched behind a tree, heart hammering so loud I thought whoever sat inside could hear it. I waited. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute. Nothing. Then slowly the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, umbrella in one hand, black coat swaying in the wind. Even from a distance, something about the way he carried himself felt wrong. Too calm, too deliberate. Not an FBI agent, not a cop, someone used to waiting. He looked straight toward the trees. I held my breath. "Miss Whitmore," he said, his voice cutting clean through the fog, smooth as glass. "You've been busy." He knew my name. I tightened my grip on the recorder, though I wasn't sure why, as if it could protect me. "I know what you have," he continued. "The drives, the tape, your father's secrets." My lungs froze. "Come out, Clara," he said softly. "You and I need to talk before someone else finds you." That phrase, "before someone else finds you," it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Still, I didn't move. The man sighed and stepped closer to the trees, mud sucking at his shoes. "Your father trusted the wrong people. So did Harold Dean. Don't make the same mistake." I almost called out until I saw what glimmered in his other hand, a gun, small, matte black, casual as a cigarette. That ended the conversation. I turned and ran deeper into the woods. Branches whipped my face. Rain stung my eyes. Behind me, footsteps crunched. Controlled steady. He wasn't chasing me, he was following. Somewhere ahead, I saw the faint outline of a road sign through the fog. I burst out of the tree line, stumbling onto cracked pavement. The sign read, "Hillcrest Industrial Park, 0.5 miles, an abandoned industrial park." I sprinted toward it, lungs burning. When I reached the gates, they were half buried in vines and rust. The perfect place to disappear. Inside, old warehouses loomed like skeletons, windows, shattered roofs sagging. I ducked into the nearest one, a steel structure that groaned in the wind, and pressed myself against a wall. The rain outside masked his footsteps, but I knew he was there, somewhere. I wiped the mud from my hands and checked my bag. The tape, the drives, still safe. But the recorder's batteries blinked red. I needed power and somewhere to think. At the back of the warehouse, I found a rusted staircase leading to a small office on the second floor, a single desk, a filing cabinet, and a rotary phone that hadn't worked since the 80s. I slumped into the chair chest, heaving, trying to piece everything together. My father's voice echoed in my mind. If anyone tells you I died peacefully, don't believe them. Then, Harold Dean's words. They didn't want the truth to survive. And now, this stranger who clearly knew more than both. I opened the journal again. In the back pocket, there was something I hadn't noticed before, a tiny folded map taped beneath the leather. I peeled it open. It was a blueprint of another facility, one labeled Whitmore Prototype Division. A note scrawled beside it in my father's handwriting read, Vault 2. For contingency only. Access with Key A. Key A, my stomach dropped. I only had Key B, the one that led me to the bank. There was another. That meant there was still more. A sound downstairs made me freeze, the creak of a door hinge, the slow grind of a shoe against concrete. He'd found me. I killed my flashlight, crouched low, and listened. The footsteps moved slowly, deliberately echoing between the metal beams. Then a voice, calm and steady. You can't hide forever, Clara. I crawled toward the office window, peeking down through the grime. The man was below, moving through the shadows. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. He knew I was trapped. A sudden gust slammed the side door shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He looked up instantly. Our eyes met through the cracked glass. I didn't think. I grabbed the nearest object, a metal stapler, and hurled it at the light fixture. Sparks rained down, plunging the room into half-darkness. Clara, his voice snapped louder now. You're making a mistake. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why bring a gun? I shouted back. Silence. Then slowly he set it down on a crate. Because other people will. My pulse pounded. Who are you? He stepped into the faint light. Name's Keller. I worked with your father. I was supposed to protect what he built before Thomas sold it out. Then why chase me? Because if I found you, it means others already have your scent. He pointed toward the open door behind him. And if they get here first, neither of us walk out. I hesitated, gripping the edge of the desk. Everything in me screamed not to trust him, but there was something in his eyes. Tiredness, sadness, not the cold emptiness I saw in my brother's. Before I could answer, headlights cut across the broken windows, multiple cars pulling up outside. Engines, doors slamming, voices shouting orders. Keller cursed under his breath. Too late. Who are they, Langan and Hart's private contractors? He said, checking the gun again. Not police. They don't arrest, they erase. The warehouse filled with the sharp echo of boots and flashlights. I ducked as beams of light swept across the upper windows. Keller handed me something, a small flash drive wrapped in black tape. Take this. It's not the same as the ones from Dean. This one, your father kept for himself. What's on it? Something worth dying for, he said grimly. The lights below grew brighter. Someone shouted, Second floor, move in. Keller pushed me toward the back stairs. There's a maintenance exit behind the generator room. Go, I'll draw them off. No, I hissed. You'll get killed, he smiled faintly. That's the job. Before I could stop him, he stepped out of the office and fired 2 shots. Shouts erupted below. I ran the other way, clutching the drive, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The exit was half blocked by fallen debris, but I squeezed through, ripping my sleeve and scraping my arm raw. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the fog was thicker than ever. Gunfire echoed behind me, then silence. I didn't know if Keller was alive. I didn't even know if I believed him. But one thing was certain, the deeper I went, the closer I got to a truth my father had died to protect. And someone else had just died to keep me moving toward it. I looked down at the new drive in my hand. It was labeled in my father's handwriting, The Real Inheritance. The fog swallowed everything, the road, the warehouses, even the stars. I walked for what felt like hours, guided only by the thin beam of a dying flashlight and the weight of the new flash drive burning in my pocket. The Real Inheritance. My father's handwriting haunted me. What had he meant? What kind of inheritance was worth killing for? By the time I reached the edge of town, the sun was nothing but a pale smear behind the clouds. My legs ached, my clothes were soaked, and every nerve in my body screamed for rest. I spotted a small cafe near a truck stop, Rosie's Diner, its neon sign flickering weakly like it was breathing its last. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried bacon wrapped around me like a blanket. Only a few truckers sat scattered across the booths. I slid into one at the back and plugged my father's flash drive into my laptop. The screen blinked, loading a single folder titled Project Heirloom. My pulse quickened. Inside were blueprints, engineering notes, and encrypted video files. The diagrams showed machines, not weapons, but something else: vast underground generators, heat coils, conduits leading to what looked like a fusion core. I frowned. My father had been in manufacturing, not energy. What was this? Then I found a file labeled Personal Record, G. Whitmore. I opened it. My father appeared on screen again, older, paler, speaking softly into the camera. If you're watching this, Clara, it means the board has turned on me. Langan and Hart never wanted our patents. They wanted what we found underneath the old plant. A new energy source, self-sustaining, clean, but unstable. I called it Heirloom, something meant to save lives, not control them. He coughed, the sound raw. They wanted to weaponize it, to sell it. I refused. That's when the accident started. When your mother's car, when Dean warned me they were closing in. I froze. My mother's car accident. I'd been 16. They'd called it mechanical failure. If anything happens to me, you must find Vault 2. Only Key A can open it. Inside is the prototype and the proof. Don't let Thomas or Lydia near it. If Langan and Hart activate Heirloom, it won't just destroy this family. It could destroy everything. The video ended abruptly, leaving only static. I sat there trembling, staring at the laptop screen. My father hadn't just been hiding money or corporate secrets. He'd been hiding a discovery, something that could change or end the world. A plate clattered in the kitchen, jolting me back to reality. One of the truckers glanced my way, then another. I noticed something off. None of them were eating anymore. They were watching me. My stomach dropped. I closed the laptop and slid the flash drive into my boot. When I stood, one of the men rose too, smiling thinly. "Long night, ma'am," he said, voice too polite. "Yeah," I muttered, inching toward the door. "Just passing through." He nodded. "Funny. You've been on the news." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I bolted. The door burst open behind me as I sprinted across the parking lot. Tires screeched, a black SUV pulled out of nowhere, headlights blinding. I dove behind a delivery truck as bullets shattered the diner's windows. "Clara Whitmore," someone shouted. "You can't run forever." The SUV engine roared, spinning gravel as it turned back toward the highway. I crawled into the cab of the delivery truck, hot-wired the ignition the way my father had once shown me when I was a teenager. The engine coughed, then came alive. As I sped away, adrenaline surging, I whispered into the darkness, "You were right, Dad. They'll kill anyone to keep this buried." The road stretched out ahead, a long black ribbon vanishing into fog. I didn't know where Vault 2 was, but somewhere out there, my father's secret was waiting. And now I understood the real inheritance wasn't money. It was power. Power enough to rewrite everything or erase me trying. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt soaked in gray. The wipers squeaked uselessly as I drove the stolen delivery truck down the winding mountain road. My father's words echoed in my head. "Find Vault 2. Only Key A can open it." Key A. I touched the chain around my neck. The small brass key swung like a heartbeat against my skin. The map from his journal lay open on the passenger seat, its edges fluttering in the wind from a cracked window. The location marked Vault 2 was deep in the forest 2 hours north of the old Whitmore plant, a place called Raven's Hollow, a valley people in town used to whisper about. The kind of place you only heard of in old rumors. By dusk, I reached a rusted sign half hidden by vines, property of Whitmore Industries. No entry. My headlights cut through the trees, catching glimpses of old machinery swallowed by moss and time. Concrete tunnels half collapsed. Broken fences. And at the far end of the clearing, a massive iron door built into the rock. Vault 2. I parked the truck behind a line of dead trees and approached on foot. Every step echoed against the wet ground. The key fit perfectly into a panel near the door, and when I turned it, gears groaned beneath the earth like something waking from a long sleep. The door hissed open, releasing a gust of cold, stale air. My flashlight beam trembled as I stepped inside. The corridor sloped downward, lined with pipes and faded safety posters. At the bottom, I found a control room, thick glass windows overlooking a vast underground chamber. And there it was, a sphere of metal the size of a small house suspended by steel arms, humming softly like a living thing. Blue light pulsed from its core, rhythmic, hypnotic, the heirloom reactor. For a moment, I couldn't move. My father had actually done it, built a self-sustaining fusion core decades ahead of its time. But something felt wrong. The lights flickered. Monitors blinked with red warnings. System incomplete. Instability detected. He hadn't finished it. On the control desk lay another letter sealed with the same red wax as before. My hands shook as I broke it open. "Clara, if you've made it here, it means Dean didn't. I'm sorry. The heirloom reactor isn't ready. It can create energy for centuries or level cities in seconds." Langan and Hart wanted the second outcome. That's why I hid it here. Destroy it if you must. But if you can finish what I started, the world might have a chance. I read the letter twice, then 3 times. My father had hidden a miracle and a curse. A faint beep pulled my attention back to the monitors. One of them flashed intrusion alert. Surface entry detected. My blood ran cold. They'd found me. I ran to the maintenance ladder, climbing down to the reactor chamber. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the floor. My reflection glimmered in the metal surface. Pale, trembling, desperate. Footsteps echoed above. Voices. "Secure the entrance. She's inside." I grabbed a crowbar from a toolbox and pried open a small service hatch at the base of the sphere. Inside, glowing coils spun slowly around a crystal core. Wires sparked and hissed. The energy coming off it made my skin prickle. For a heartbeat, I thought of walking away, letting them take it, letting it all burn. But then I saw my father's handwriting on the metal itself etched near the hatch. Truth over fear. I whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad," and slammed the crowbar into the wiring. Sparks exploded. The lights died. Alarms wailed. I turned and ran the corridor, shaking as the reactor roared to life, unstable, furious. Gunfire erupted behind me. Bullets tore through pipes and concrete. A man shouted, "Stop her! She's triggering it!" I dove through the doorway as a blinding flash filled the tunnel. Heat washed over me, hurling me forward. I hit the ground outside, gasping, the world trembling under my palms. Behind me, Vault 2 groaned, then collapsed in on itself, a thunderous roar that swallowed the valley whole. When the dust settled, all that remained was silence, and the faint dying hum of what used to be my father's greatest secret. I pulled the broken key from around my neck and stared at it. The real inheritance, I whispered, wasn't power. It was the choice to stop it. In the distance, sirens wailed. They were coming. But for the first time since this began, I wasn't afraid, because this time the secret died with me. When I woke, the world was gray. The air tasted like metal and smoke. I was lying in a ditch a few hundred feet from the ruins of the vault, or what was left of it. The trees around me were scorched, their trunks still smoldering. The sky shimmered with ash, the dawn bleeding red through the haze like an open wound. My head throbbed. My clothes were torn and caked with soot. Somehow, I was still alive. I pushed myself up, every bone aching, and turned toward the crater that used to be Vault 2. The entrance was gone, swallowed by rubble and earth. The once massive iron door now lay twisted like foil. Beneath it, faint blue light still pulsed from deep underground, dying slowly, heartbeat by heartbeat. The heirloom reactor was gone. Or maybe still alive. I couldn't tell. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, rescue teams, or maybe the people who had come to erase the evidence. I didn't wait to find out. I stumbled through the forest branches, cracking beneath my boots. The world felt heavy, like it knew what I'd done. When I finally reached the main road, a pickup truck slowed beside me. An old farmer leaned out the window. "You need help, miss?" I forced a weak smile. "Just a ride. Anywhere away from here." He nodded. "Get in." We drove in silence for miles, the radio whispering static. At one point he said, "You hear about that explosion in the valley? Whole place lit up like a second sunrise. They say it was some kind of government test." "Yeah," I murmured. "Something like that." He dropped me off at a rest stop an hour later. I thanked him, slipped into the restroom, and stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. A ghost stared back, hollow eyes, dirt-streaked face hair, tangled and singed at the ends. I washed my hands, the water turning gray, and pulled the small flash drive labeled A from my pocket. It was cracked down the middle half, melted from the heat. But when I plugged it into my laptop, one file still loaded. A video. My father again. If this is the end, Clara, then maybe that's what it always had to be. I didn't create Heirloom for power. I created it to prove that humanity could build without destroying. But every invention is a mirror. It shows who we truly are. If you had to make a choice, I trust you made the right one. I covered my mouth, tears cutting through the soot on my cheeks. He'd known. He'd always known this moment would come. The screen flickered and his voice returned one last time, soft, weary, almost a whisper. "You're my real legacy, Clara. Not the machine, not the company. You." The video ended. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long time, the hum of the vending machines filling the silence. Outside, the sky had cleared. The first sunlight I'd seen in days stretched across the wet asphalt, bright and clean. But peace never lasts. A newspaper rested on the counter beside the coffee machine. Its front page headline read, "Whitmore Industries, CEO, Thomas Whitmore, killed in explosion. Investigation underway." I froze. My brother. The article mentioned a private task force connected to foreign investors who had gone missing as well. Lydia's name wasn't listed, but I knew she wouldn't stay silent for long. The world thought it had been an accident, a tragic industrial collapse. And maybe that's what it was in the end. A tragedy, but not an accident. I zipped up my jacket and stepped outside. The wind was warm, gentle. For the first time in weeks, no one was chasing me. No one knew my name. But in my pocket, I still carried one piece of the reactor, a small shard of blue crystal that had fused to the crowbar when I struck it. It pulsed faintly against my palm, like it was still alive. I looked out over the horizon and whispered, "You can rest now, Dad. It's over." But somewhere deep inside, a voice I didn't recognize whispered back, "Is it really?" Because power like that, the kind that could light or burn the world, never truly dies. A week later, I was still alive, though. Sometimes I wondered if that was a blessing or a punishment. The news had already buried the story. The explosion at Ravens Hollow was officially labeled an industrial accident, a gas leak. No survivors. No mention of reactors or Heirloom or the Whitmore name. Just a few lines on the evening broadcast forgotten by morning. I rented a room under a different name in a small coastal town 3 states away, a place where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their own ghosts. I spent my days walking the cliffs, my nights sitting by the window, listening to the sea pound against the rocks. Some nights I dreamed of my father standing in his workshop, the faint hum of machines behind him, the smell of oil and rain. He'd look at me with that patient half smile and say, "The hardest part of the truth is learning when to stop digging." I understood now. Some truths don't set you free, they just change the shape of your cage. The shard of blue crystal still glowed faintly on my bedside table, casting tiny waves of light across the room. I'd tried to throw it into the ocean once, but I couldn't. It was all I had left of him. Of everything. One morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a blurred image of a lab. And on the far wall, under harsh fluorescent light, the Heirloom reactor stood intact, its core burning brighter than ever. My hands went numb. At the bottom of the photo, scrawled in pen, were 4 words. "You didn't finish it." Outside, thunder rolled across the water. The glass in the window vibrated. I looked at the photo again, my pulse quickening. Part fear, part something else. Determination. Maybe the secret hadn't died after all. I slipped the crystal into my pocket, grabbed my coat, and stepped into the rain. Somewhere out there, someone had rebuilt what my father created. And this time, I wouldn't run. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It followed me across state lines as if the sky itself refused to let me forget. I drove north, the photograph of the reactor on the passenger seat edges curled from my grip. Each mile felt heavier. Whoever sent that picture knew exactly where to find me and what it would do to me. By the fourth night, I reached the outskirts of Boston. The city lights shimmered through the mist, sharp and distant. I found an old motel near the docks and checked in under the name Claire Watson. It didn't matter anymore. Nothing could hide me from what was coming. I set the photograph on the table and studied the background again. The lab looked sterile new, not a relic like my father's. Government, maybe, or private. Someone with enough money to rebuild what should have died. The crystal in my pocket throbbed faintly like it could feel the reactor calling to it. When I held it near the photograph, it pulsed brighter alive. That was when the phone in the motel room rang. I stared at it frozen. It rang again. I picked it up. Silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard since the night of the fire. "Hello?" Clara Lydia said softly. "You destroyed one vault. But did you really think there was only 2?" My blood turned to ice. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the rain-slick window. I looked down at the glowing shard in my hand and whispered, "Then it's not over." No answer came, only the dial tone, and the storm outside growing louder.